lot of people that are not.
I counted 80 people. Well, I looked at what they held up.
That's right. Okay. I think I'll just use that idea.
Right over there, Sean.
Because then I'm not sure.
We should. It's right there here too.
Oh, so we'll need to show.
It's a long way, but nice though.
Okay. And make this first one. Okay, good. Yeah. If I go pause it, come off the screen. Okay, do whatever you need.
I know.
And this is for
Yeah.
all right. All set. Yeah. Oh, good. All right, it's 9:30, and our Rick Almberg, our board chair, is taking his daughter to college. Oh no, that's Paul, our financial, principal financial person on staff. Rick Almberg has family obligations, so as vice chair, I'll be taking care of this meeting for him. And right, Rick's daughter's getting married, and that's pretty important to him and her. So I've called the meeting to order. I'm asking our labor representative Lance to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
So welcome to our clients from the public, and a special welcome to a couple of guests. Jerry Spears, Deputy Director of WISTIP. We're glad to have you join us today. And Al Hendricks is representing our legal firm in place of Mike Hendricks, and is a 20-30-year veteran of public transport representation, and we're glad to have you as our legal advice today. The agenda items have been under a little bit of revision over what was posted, I believe, on the website, but I think the revisions are not substantive. There's still 5 business items on the agenda, 5 major items, and then our regular agenda. Is there any need for modification to the agenda?
I move approval of the agenda as presented.
Seconded.
It's been moved and seconded that we accept the agenda as presented. All those, any discussion? Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
All right, unanimously adopted.
I move approval of the consent agenda as presented.
I'll second it.
Been moved and seconded to approve the consent agenda. That's a new feature of our meeting. What it does is package together the approval of minutes and the approval of the master voucher list, which we've had reviewed by our finance subcommittee. Any discussion, any further discussion of the consent agenda by the board? All right. All those in favor of accepting the consent agenda?
Aye.
Aye. Unanimously accepted. Under manager's reports, we will lead off with a report from our executive director. And I guess there's one other thing that I'll point out about the agenda before we do that. And that is the agenda today places public input after the business items. That is at the request of our chair, Rick Alberg, because it allows, people are allowed to comment on the business items from the public, and then at the end we see if there's other comments not related to those items. We've always tried to encourage people not to talk about the agenda items till we get to them, and this way the public input comes right after the last agenda item and covers any, in effect, additional concerns or new business. We'll try that out and see how that works. Now, our interim executive director, I know, has 2 or 3 things to report to us on. Ken Bratska, please.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. In your packets, you have a item that is referred to as, I believe it's draft. Let's see what it is here. Draft articles for the new island transportation planning organization. They don't have, okay. Meg's handing those out.
Why don't you give us a general explanation?
Sure. The Island Transportation Planning Organization is intended to be an organization, a planning organization that picks up where the regional organization left us after it disbanded. And there's a new set of articles and bylaws that have been created to develop our own Island County Transportation Planning Organization. And Doug Cox from the county has asked that the board have a chance to review the articles, and if you'll provide any input or any changes or ask any questions related to those articles. And actually, Jill and Rick, you were on the board of that group. If you had any additional comments you wanted to provide related to this transformation.
The fundamental difference for Island Transit is that when Island County becomes an Island County Transportation Planning Organization, as it stands right now, mayors and court districts had votes. Those votes will now be advisory, and the only votes will be the votes of the Island County Commissioners. Because we aren't recognized as a regional transportation planning organization by the state, because we need a population of 100,000. And so because of that, these articles shifted up to be an Island County Transportation Planning Organization until we can have a legislative change that would allow us to be a regional planning organization. And so it just shifts where the votes really go.
So, I have a question. So how will we interact with this?
So Ken or the board, right now it says the board chair, but I think the board chair can delegate to Ken, could have a seat on the IC TPO, but it would be, it is an advisory seat, and the only votes would sit with the commissioners. We're researching whether or not the commissioners can empower the ICTPO with their authority to be the authority body, but as of right now, the legal advice we've been given is that we cannot do that. So it would just be advisory participation, but that there is a seat for transit.
Jill, would you explain what the general purpose of the board is in terms of, I think there's some things that it would do that we as a transit board can't do.
So when it was an RTPO, Regional Transportation Planning Organization, and its intention is to operate similarly, just with different authority now. It is looking at some of those connectivity conversations. It's the conversations between urban areas, cities, towns, and counties. You review your transportation improvement program, your non-motorized trail program, all of those transportation funding programs that sometimes will have municipal applications that also need to get improved through the same granting program. And so it would feed all that in. The only difference now would be that the commissioners are the only ones who can vote on that. So it allows transit to participate in conversations that are broader than just transit. The human services, there's a human services transportation plan that talks about different needs in the community, and that is a regional connectivity plan and has been in the past. So transit's involved in those types of conversations to make sure you're moving people who may be disabled for a variety of different reasons, making sure that they're able to have all the connective services they need.
Right.
So, and it's been important to the RTPO as it has been evolving that we continue to behave in the same way, because our last conversations were about Mukilteo and the connections over there. And then we've had conversations about Sharp's Corner and the importance of staying engaged in that conversation. And because Island County is impacted by concurrency, it's very important that our connections on and off the island happen, because of the level of service that we can't control impacts the level of service in Island County, and it's not at a high enough level. It completely stops development in the county. So our neighboring partnerships are pretty considerable.
No, I know it's important, and I just wanted you to emphasize and explain that it has a broader scope. This board is dealing with paratransit, van pools, and the public bus system on the island, and this goes well beyond that. And has the proper decision makers represented. Okay, any further comments or questions about this This is brought about by the fact that the previous regional transportation board was basically dissolved over the last couple of months, and so this is a replacement.
Do you need action from us?
I think the action could come at our next special meeting, which gives us time to review it.
Right.
That's what Ken and I discussed, but what,
That's fine. I was,
Yeah.
if we needed action, I was just gonna do a pending legal review.
well, we do need legal review, and this gives us time for our own review. Because our next special meeting precedes the adoption date required.
Has Doug run this through county's legal?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
I thought so, I just wanted to be sure.
All right.
Okay.
Other things? Ken?
I don't know at this time if we need actual action or not. Doug has set September 23rd as, well, that's the next COG meeting, to have all listed members to sign the articles. Does that mean then that we should adopt this prior to that meeting?
Well, we aren't signatory, are we? Oh, the executive director or his designee. We should probably authorize you we have a meeting on the 21st of September, is that right?
17th.
The 17th, at which point we could authorize you. Just, let's not forget.
Yeah,
Okay. But that does give us time to read through this.
okay, good. Maybe we'll take that up at the 17th meeting.
All right, other items, Ken?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I'm pleased to report that we completed the sale of our surplus equipment in all 31 vehicles of various ages, condition, types, and we netted just over $80,000. I think it was about $82,000 in revenue from that sale. It hasn't been deposited yet. It will be a direct deposit to our account, and will then be put into reserves upon receipt.
Great. Great, it's part of about 180,000 that we're planning to begin our reserves with at the end of this year.
In the equipment revolving fund?
That's what I'm assuming, but I need to check make sure with Paul on that, but that's where it should go.
I think it exceeds what he had planned for the revolving fund, and therefore would go into the bus replacement fund directly, part of it. It comes from the sale of buses and vans, right?
Right.
Yeah. So part of it would go into that capital fund, and part of it would go into the revolving or undesignated reserve. So
That,
it exceeds what is budgeted for that.
the capital fund for bus replacement and the equipment revolving fund should be the same thing.
Okay, well then it's going in the right place.
Okay.
Right.
Okay. Okay, good. I'm glad.
Actually, that's
That
hard
makes
here.
it simpler. Lance?
Okay, and then,
Ken, excuse me,
sorry,
were these vehicles, were they all vehicles?
oh yeah,
Okay, through an auction?
through an online auction process through the state of Washington. They have a auction sort of clearinghouse site for public agencies within the state of Washington, and provide all the services for auctioning off the vehicles. They provide all the photographs, all the descriptive information, all the administrative work involved in disposing of the vehicles, and it's a very, very efficient system, very, really relieves us of a lot of that
Yeah.
administrative work.
Yeah. Okay, that's fine, thanks.
And we actually discussed them almost one by one about 3 months ago in terms of whether they were sufficiently aged, and they are well beyond their projected lifetime.
Good.
Yeah.
And we in fact do have more beyond their lifetimes, but we need those in the existing fleet. Finally, Mr. Chairman, I want to report on a meeting of yesterday, August 27th, a meeting that was called by Chairman Almberg back in July while I was still on leave. He had requested a meeting with Representative Hayes and Senator Bailey to discuss current funding situation with 411 and 412. Also to discuss the future of those funds as far as going beyond 2-year cycles and possibility of making that a more permanent sort of funding mechanism rather than based on the 2-year biennium. Then also discussing regionalism with Whatcom and Skagit counties. The meeting involved myself, Rick, Senator Bailey, Representative Hayes, and the 2 directors from Skagit and Whatcom counties. And basically it was a tri-county kind of open discussion of the issues and trying to brainstorm a little bit how we can work more closely together and to try to secure funding in a more cohesive manner rather than through the patchwork sort of process we have now. And I think overall it was very productive. Representative Hayes and Senator Bailey were both very satisfied with, very pleased with our efforts in getting 412 implemented, and they appreciate our efforts to do that, and appreciate our efforts to become more involved in the tri-county system. And so overall it was a very positive meeting. I felt very encouraged after we left that meeting. And I think and I think also maybe one of the underlying intents was also to keep them involved and interested for the next session coming up too, getting a head start on that. So
The next legislative session.
yes.
Was there any specific actions assigned or planned that people will follow up on?
Not particularly, other than we did discuss implementation of the 412, kind of a more expedited way in which to implement 412 with used manual fare boxes and getting that system in place and instituting fares for 412 prior to the outcome of the fare study. So the issue of the manual fare boxes came up, expediting that process. Skagit offered to give us fare boxes, to donate fare boxes to us, and Skagit has also offered to provide all the services related to the counting and sorting of the funds and depositing and transportation of those funds to our bank and depositing of those funds and so on. So so Skagit has offered to take care of that administrative function for us.
What's their rate on that route? What do they charge for that? What are they going to charge for the 412 route?
They currently charge $2 for all of their express services.
Each way.
Each way. And Whatcom does too. Skagit charges $1 for in-county trips one way.
It might be good to put that on our next work session agenda if the equipment is available and they're willing to do the admin piece, to discuss whether or not we want to charge just the same fare for consistency purposes, and maybe we can get that moving quick.
And that was part of the discussion too, that to be consistent and to get started, that we maybe do it as simply and smoothly as possible to start with, and we can make changes later on, but just to get started, get our feet off the ground. And that would be also consistent with the next workshop topic, which is the peer review item also.
Yeah, yeah, I think I agree with Joe Johnson that it's important for us to be actively involved in setting the affairs that are elected, so that it's not just set. Probably we want to set them the same as these neighboring counties, but it should be an active decision of the board.
Right. That concludes my report, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Any further questions? Yes.
Are
sure.
we planning the same type of meeting with community transit in Snohomish County?
That has come up, and I think we do intend to do that, and certainly I'm going to be doing that at the staff level, because we do have the the overlap with Snohomish at Stanwood, and also I understand that if the new sales tax increase goes into effect, that there will be some planning efforts put into the Stanwood and Long Beach area for service changes or improvements in those areas. So I do want to get with their staff and see where they're going with that, and maybe we can do some sort of combined service down the road.
Will they be participating in our next workshop peer review?
I'm sorry?
Will these counties be participating in the panel that we're planning for our next workshop
No.
on fares? No, okay. Well, thank you. And next on our agenda is a financial report, and I mentioned at the opening of the meeting that our principal financial analyst is also taking his daughter to college today. And so we don't have a staff report, but we do have the 6-year transit development plan as a major item on our agenda, and I've prepared an additional, with Paul Arndt, I've prepared an additional PowerPoint presentation on that. Other than that, I think it's important to note that our end of July cash not in reserves is $1.6 million. That, of course, some of that, about 350,000 of that, will be needed for our 1st of October insurance payment, and probably another 100,000 of that would be used in terms of capital funding, capital grant matches. But that still leaves a very healthy reserve that could cover up to 2 months of operating expenses if all of our income all of a sudden was held up by a flood or a forest fire. Well, it would. You're right. It's not enough to cover 2 months. You're quite right. It would cover just over a month, about a month and a half, because our monthly expenses are running just over 800,000. Thank you, Joe. What we have at the moment would cover 2 months, but we have some expenses coming up. And we intend to end the year with approximately 2 months coverage. Any other discussion on the detailed finances? I think the action that we took earlier in the consent agenda accepted the master voucher list. So I think we're all set. Okay, yes.
I have a question. Is the most recent statement online so that I could go in and look online and see what our current cash
I
balance
believe
is?
so. I believe I saw it online before I saw it here on the table. Yes,
It is online?
yeah,
Okay.
so the cash summary report has been up there for, Megan's saying, about the past week or week and a half.
Past week?
Week, yes, the
Okay.
past week or week and a half.
Okay. But it's not available here at the meeting, is that correct, for us to look at? It's simply online?
July's online, not August.
We don't have, I guess we didn't print off extra copies.
Okay.
So at the close of the meeting, I'd be willing to share the cash summary report page with you.
Okay. When we're talking about, you used the word reserves. Did you really mean to use the word reserves when you were talking about making payments on the insurance?
No, it's coming out of our operating cash.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, it's not coming out of reserves. If I said that, I misspoke.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Other questions or comments on the financial situation, financial details? Okay, thanks. Next on our agenda is operations report. Sean? Could you just say something about continuity with the county connectors? I presume they're continuing as they were in July.
Yeah, we're still working on meeting our expectations for those. It's been a long process because we kind of got the word at the last minute.
Yeah.
But we're pulling all that information together, we're getting schedules together and getting ready to start up new bids around September. So we're coordinating all these different little changes that we have with school going back in session as well. Bringing on a few new operators also to help with that. So we've been in a training mode. So that's why I don't have a lot to report. I've been out in the field taking care of a lot of that.
Okay. Are there other manager reports that we were needing to hear? Okay. Well, next larger item on the agenda is the chair's report. And I think Rick Almberg has been very active on a couple items that are coming up in this agenda. Is this the place to discuss the settlement of the floor issue? I'm trying to see it. Okay, great. Okay, right. We'll get to that. And as vice chair and member of the finance subcommittee, I have been up here a couple of times meeting with Paul Arendt in advance of this meeting to make sure that I understood the 6-year development plan. Paul wanted to emphasize that it is a plan, not a budget. And it precedes actually our budgeting process, and it does so because it's required to be submitted by the 1st of September by state RCWs, which precedes our normal budgeting process. But it's, like I said, not a budget, and we'll go into detail on that item in just a few minutes. Any further board discussion of these reports before we go into our first business item? All right, let's... Yes, Lance.
Ken, you had answered a question earlier whether community transit was going to be involved in some talks here, and you said no. I'm curious why they're not being included.
Well, the question was regarding the fair peer review process. And the reason for that is the state wanted to focus more on smaller systems more the size of Island Transit and not involving larger systems in that type of review. However, community transit does need to be involved in any discussions we have relative to any fares that we may start on Camino and cross into Snohomish and those sorts of the local issues.
Right,
But
right.
the peer review group is made up of smaller systems or individuals who've been involved with smaller systems, and the state preferred keeping the larger systems out of that process,
Okay,
which I think is fair.
I understand now. Thank you for clearing that up.
Other discussion? Let's go to our first business item. A presentation by WISTIP. Jerry Spears, the Deputy Director of WISTIP, is with us, and we welcome him to make this scholarship presentation.
Thank you. Thank you to the board for having us here today, and to Ken and the management team. We're excited to be here, and we're excited to give a shout out to Lou, and we'll ultimately get to that in a second. But just a little background on WISTIP. We've been around since 1989. We started with 8 transit agencies. Island Transit joined in 1992. We're up to 25 transit agencies now. Our members drive almost 100 million miles a year. 100 million miles a year. We insure over 5,000 vehicles and over 4,700 employees. We also have a driver record monitoring program that monitors the drivers and our volunteers that drive our public vehicles. We'll monitor over 15,000 driver records on a monthly basis. The scholarship program was created in this last year for a gentleman named Jeff Risto. And Jeff was the CFO at Community Transit for years and years and years. I think he became the CFO in 1989. And I think he's an Oregon Duck off the top of my head. He's an Oregon Duck, so he was an outstanding person. And the board elected to create this scholarship so it would continue his commitment that he had to his peers, to his fellow employees, to the people he worked with on the board, that encouraged long-term economic goals, partnerships, high ethical standards, accountability, vision. We started this in 2013, and we have $20,000 set aside, and the requirements for the program for people to apply are they have to be an employee of the agency and an employee of one of the transit agencies and a member of the pool. And to qualify for the scholarship, you have to be engaged in an accredited college or university or accredited continuing education program, and we award up to $1,000 per person. We have up to 20 scholarships, up to $20,000. And we are delighted to be here to give a shout out to Lou. How do you say? Sure. I was sweating because I wasn't sure how to say it, but we wanted to come here and shake her hand and say thank you so much for doing this and continuing on with Jeff's commitment to education. It's a big deal, and we're glad you're continuing your education, and we're excited to be part of this. So thank you.
Thank you.
Lou, would you like to tell us what the scholarship is going towards?
It's going towards the education of HTML5, which is a video-based program in the hyper terminal media language that computers are based on, but it's based on video and CSS3, which is the formatting of the text within a computer to give it bold, different fonts, things like that, and expand on our monitors that are placed throughout the facility for information that we put out to all the employees within the agency. And since the scholarship was based on safety being paramount, we put a lot of information up on the monitors regarding safety issues and just being aware of safety while the operators are out there driving.
That's also in Harbor Station.
There's one in Harbor Station, there's one on Camino, there's one here, and, yeah, 2 here.
Too, yeah.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jerry. Our next business item is something that has been hanging over from the construction project, and we're happy to report that our board chair, Rick Holmberg, has fortunately a strong construction background himself, and he has pushed a series of meetings that have led to a recommended solution to a problem on the poured concrete floor of the maintenance building. The documents behind the solution, I think, established quite thoroughly that it is not a structural problem. It's not really much of a usability problem, but it is a situation where some of the surface has bubbled and cracked. The cracks are mostly measured between 1/32 and 1/16 of an inch. It's not big cracks, but they are cracks that will be filled as part of this settlement, and it allows final closeout of the construction project, and once all the papers are signed, a release of final withholdings, which have already been accounted for in our budget and such, but have not actually been dispersed. So let's have any questions about this settlement or comments about the settlement. It seems like I thought at first that it was cosmetic, but it turns out that having the floor as light a color as possible lowers the lighting bill, because it is reflective and makes the working area better lit. It also, of course, prevents, I think, further absorption of any spilled materials, and fixing the bubbling, which is not in the main work area, but is in some subsidiary areas, I think will lead to the ability to fulfill the long-term lifetime expectations for the floor surface. The maintenance building and this building was built with a 20-year life of the agency in mind. The building, of course, hopefully will last 50 or 100 years, but the requirements of the grant included that it be built also as a long-term center for any type of emergency response, where the buses have to keep running and where shelter could be provided and coordination and communication of emergency responses island-wide. And this brings to a conclusion the one item that was unsettled. Do you want to comment on it further, Ken?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. I want to point out the packet that was just passed around is an updated packet. Actually, it's just an updated letter from Tiger Construction. The original letter that was sent out with the packet excluded an item that I had negotiated with Tiger and was not included in the original letter. I discussed it with Tiger this week. This morning at 7:30, they sent over a revised letter with the additional item in it. And I'll point out that the additional item is not in, as I said, your original letter. It's in the new letter dated August 28th. It's the second sentence under item number 1 on the first page. Second sentence is, this includes all the saw cut joints in the building. That was excluded from the first letter that was negotiated. They had forgotten to put that in the first letter. It is included. It's no cost to us. None of these repairs are at a cost to us. The items 1, 2, 3 are the meat of the repairs being made.
Yeah, repairs and in some cases just sanding down one joint that might have been a safety question, a 1/4 inch discrepancy on one part of the floor. The very last sentence of the letter, the first page. So it's a detail, but these are all important details that have now been resolved.
Well, I just want to, I think it's very important to understand how much time Mr. Alberg put into this, going through past invoices, tracking down the original contracts, talking with the contractors and the construction folks. I think that, you know, respectfully, I think that it is an unrealistic expectation that's placed on the board to do this amount of hands-on work in an organization. And he did that. I think he was in here consistently. I would wager he spent over 50 hours of his time tracking this down and trying to help close this out so the subcontractors could all get paid, because they haven't been paid yet until this closes out. And he took it very seriously, and I think that he is due some credit and some appreciation from the community for really getting this behind us. There was a lot involved in my understanding of just how the floor was even designed as one big slab versus portions of slabs that have joints, and when it gets too construction-y, I'm out of the game. But he understood that and what the significance was and what that would mean in terms of the kinds of improvements that were needed. And I think this board and also the community should be very appreciative of his skill set and what it saved Island Transit. Good for him. And good for us. It says these will be done at no cost to Island Transit. So you gotta love that sentence.
Right, and of course without legal litigation.
That's right.
I might point out, Jill, that his first, one of his very first tasks when he came on his chair was to get this situation resolved. And he went like a bull after it. And I also want to add that to complicate the process, I mean, having the technical knowledge and the background that he does in construction is one thing, which none of us have around this table, but also involved a tremendous amount of his time as well as staff time putting together old records and old documents to piece this whole thing together, because the board wouldn't know this being a new board, but approximately halfway through the project, essentially there was no project manager overseeing the project, so consequently records were in disarray, and we spent a lot of time going back to get the information to make our case. So yes, we're very appreciative of his efforts.
And their staff, I mean, a lot of people worked hard on it.
Yes.
He did get that pit bull gene though.
Yeah.
So I've learned, be focused, get out of the way.
Yeah.
Some comments or questions from our customers?
No, I think he did a fantastic job.
Thank you. Yeah, I think he did too. And I was very pleased when I saw the settlement letters. Like you said, no cost to Island Transit, and it seems like a reasonable solution and a practical solution, which is, I think, always been a concern of mine, that it be a practical solution. It doesn't have to be perfect, but it will be practical. It will be usable, totally usable, and maintainable. Any further questions or comments? If not, I would entertain a motion to bring this matter to official resolution. There's a motion suggested in our packet.
I move that the Board of Directors accept the recommendations from Waterleaf Architects and Tiger Construction to resolve outstanding maintenance floor issues with work to be completed at no cost to Island Transit by September 30, 2015, subject to the caveat that the recommendations must be FTA approved.
I'll second it.
Been moved and seconded to accept these recommendations from our building architect and the construction company. Any further discussion of the motion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Unanimously accepted. Okay, we can move on to our discussion of the Island Transit 6-year transit development plan. We'll first of all give a little bit of introduction from the state point of view before we look at our plan in particular. The state RCW says that by September 1st of each year, each regional transit authority shall prepare a 6-year transit development plan for that calendar year and the ensuing 5 years. It says that the program should be consistent with comprehensive plans adopted by counties, cities, and towns. The program should contain information as to how the regional agency plans to meet, should state long-range priorities for public transportation, for capital improvements, any significant operating changes to the plan for the system, and how the Regional Transit Authority intends to fund the program over this period of time. Shall specifically set forth projects of regional significance, and we need to file the 6-year program with the State Department of Transportation and the Transportation Improvement Board and various local bodies by the 1st of September. That hopefully explains why we're doing it now, ahead of our 2016 budget. We have pretty good projections for how we will finish 2015, and we have a draft 2016 budget, but we're just starting that budget process. And of course, once you reach beyond 2016 into 2017 and 18, it's clear that this is a plan and not a budget, because one cannot say exactly how the economy will develop or our major sources of revenue. But one of the things I will present are the assumptions that are underlying this plan, which is always the important question with a plan. One could say it's a model. It's a financial model of how we would hope things would go and unfold, and it's also a model of policy possibilities. But each of the policies that are mentioned in this plan remain to be officially endorsed and adopted one by the board. So let me proceed with an introduction of like I said, the priorities and assumptions that are included in this plan, which has been, the first draft of it was on our website, I think, about 3 weeks ago. Is that right, Meg? Yeah. The second draft did not make changes, very significant changes of any sort to the text, but tried to update the numbers with the most plausible updates, and so that the current posting of the, what we call draft number 2, out there for our consideration today is a little more accurate in terms of the bottom line at the end of the plan. Yeah, let me just make sure I've got this right. Okay, that's okay. That's okay. All right. I think this is, yeah, this is pretty. Well, you'll have to excuse that little blue thing. I closed mine, but let me just try again to close that. Oh, well, it's not obscuring the slide. The first thing that I wanted to talk about is, oh, it's not moving, just 1 second. Okay. Now let's see if it moves. Yeah, here we go. This was in our previous meeting's presentation that in the middle of 2014, the board's finance subcommittee suggested these 3 goals for 2015 with regard to the budget itself, to continue building reserves that hopefully will amount to at least $500,000, that we finish the 2015 year with at least $300,000 in working cash, and that we explore alternatives for additional income. And I was going to give examples. We did explore the possibility of adding advertising to the buses and to the bus shelters. We put out an RFP, a request for proposals. We had a couple of inquiries, but we had no bids. And the fact that we had no bids was told to us by the possible suppliers that our market is perhaps too small and not maybe relevant to the larger advertisers who could afford the rates that these companies would charge for that kind of thing. We also explored our surplus vehicle situation, came up with 31 vehicles that many of which were already sitting idle on the lot because they were overaged or broken down because of age. And we passed those along to the state for auction, and as Ken reported, we're expecting $82,000 that we will devote to our capital reserves going into next year. And finally, we applied by action of the board at our last working session for a van pool grant. We asked for the maximum that we could qualify for. We're hopeful to get some vans out of it. We don't expect to be really entitled to the maximum number of vans, but again, we're trying to replace the oldest vans before they become totally inserviceable. We are also starting the process of exploring fare box revenues. So those are the things that the board has undertaken this year. These are the bottom line expectations. These are projected results. And just a word of explanation. That first item adds up